Good morning, BookTube. This is Sarah from Never Out of Books. This morning I am going to wrap up the first half of August and go into what I'm currently reading so you can see what I have for this next part. During my TBR, if I posted it, I said that I was going to read some lighter books this first half of the month, and I gave some possibilities. Well, I did not read any of those possibilities, I don't think. Maybe one or two of them. But I did read some really good books and some fun books, and I feel so much better, and it was perfect vacation reading. I was on vacation last week, so I'm going to wrap those up first. The first book that I read this month was this one, Innocent in Las Vegas by A.R. Winters. This is the first in a series of mystery novels, more cozy mystery, the Tiffany Black Mysteries they're calling it. And this is about Tiffany. She works at a casino, and she is trying to get her PI license. Her first case involves investigating the murder of a casino owner. The police have already put his wife on house arrest for the murder, and she is working for that woman to prove her innocence. And this was a fun book. I've never been to Las Vegas, and I don't know much about the scene there, but it reads similar to a more lighthearted CSI show. So if you take the I don't know if they're really tropes or not about these powerful people, but it's similar to that. And it was a very good read, and I enjoyed it, and I gave it 3 stars. The next book that I read is The Square Root of Summer. This was a new book out by Harriet Ruder Hapgood. She's a UK author, and I got this from my library. This is the story of Gotti. Her mom has died long ago. Her grandfather, who was really like a father figure to her, just died the year prior. So she spent a year in a lot of grief. He was a very eccentric man. Some years prior, her best friend, her only friend, just disappeared and went away and never contacted her again, and it is a boy. She has a brother, and she also had a secret relationship with her brother's best friend during this prior year. So that's the setup for the book. What starts the action is her father, who has been a bit distant with her, invites her friend who had disappeared, Thomas, to stay in their grandfather's room for the summer prior to starting school because he is going to be moving back. So you can cue the drama right now. To be completely honest, this book was very, very, very hard for me to read. I did not get it. I believe the author wrote this in memory of a mathematician or something, and I felt like I needed to be a mathematician to read this book. I was having a very hard time differentiating when she was slipping back in time and when she was not, and what was real and what wasn't. And maybe that was the point of the book, but it did not sit well with me. At over halfway through the book, I still was unclear as to where we were going and what was going on with this book. I did skim read until the end, and I really did like the ending of it, but this book really just was not for me. I believe I only gave it 2 stars, and maybe this book would be for other people. It just wasn't concrete enough for me, and it just didn't sit with me. The next book that I read was At Last by Jill Shalvis. This is the 5th book in the Lucky Harbor series. I believe there are about 11 books in it now. I might be incorrect with that. This is the story of Amy the waitress and Matt the forest ranger. Amy is in town following her grandmother's footsteps through her journal to find happiness, and she meets the forest ranger in that way, and there's some serious tension, and neither of them want any sort of commitment. And then you add in a homeless teenager that's camping out in the woods illegally, and you have a great story. I thoroughly enjoyed this. I'm looking forward to picking up the next books in the series over the next months. I really wanted to read them this month, but I've got too many things going on, so that's not going to happen. And I believe I gave this 4 stars, I think. The next book that I read was Anything for You by Kristen Higgins, the final book in the Blue Heron series. This is Connor and Jess's story, And if you've been reading the series, you know these people. They've been in every book since then. Connor owns a bar. He's a chef. Jess works at a local vineyard and also busses tables. They've had an on and off again relationship for 10 years or something. Jess feels very responsible for her younger brother, who was born with fetal alcohol poisoning because her mother was an alcoholic, and she watches him because neither of her parents are in their lives. I have to say, the first half of this book with all the flashbacks and everything wasn't really my cup of tea, but it did redeem itself in the end. It was just very slow at first. I couldn't believe how long it took me to read this book, to be perfectly honest. It was endearing very much, though, how much Connor was in love with Jess. So it starts with him proposing. This is not a spoiler because the book starts with him proposing to her and saying, you know, I need more out of this relationship. And like, no. So after about the 60% mark, I zoomed right through. It was smooth reading through that point, and it was a good ending to the series. I did only give it 3 stars though, because I did not enjoy it as much as the rest. The next book that I read on vacation was The 7 Steps to Closure by Donna Joy Usher. This is a chick lit book. This is about 4 friends, and there's actually all of their stories in it, but it does focus predominantly on one of them, whose ex-husband, actually it wasn't a husband, whose ex-fiance left her for her cousin, and they are now getting married, and the friends all figure it has been enough. She needs to get back out there into the dating game. Well, one of these friends finds a Cosmo magazine with an article on the 7 steps to closure and insists that she follow these 7 steps. So she does. And this is the story, and I really enjoyed this. I have not read a lot of Australian literature or things set in Australia, so I really loved it. And at one part, she travels to India, and that's another place that I haven't really read a whole lot about, and the descriptions of the places in India where she went were very fantastic. One of the perks of the multi-generational home. Lots of interruption. One of the other parts of this book that I really enjoyed are her parents. They are an absolute riot. Her mother works for an animal shelter for basically psychotic animals, and she keeps giving her more and more pets that are just, the whole thing's hysterical. So overall, I really enjoyed this book. I gave it 4 stars, and I'm gonna look for more from this author. The last book that I read the first part of August was Big Boned by Meg Cabot. This is the 3rd book from the Heather Wells series. I downloaded this on my Kindle before we went on vacation from the library. At this point, Heather is dating her teacher. Although she is working at the college tuition reimbursement, she's kind of a student and kind of an administrator. So there is a gray line there. But in this one, her interim boss gets killed. And this is right at the time that the graduate students are trying to unionize for better health benefits and safe, affordable housing. So immediately Sarah, who I'm so glad Sarah has a bigger part. I really, really, really like this character. She's a resident hall graduate assistant to Heather. Her boyfriend she wants him to be her boyfriend, immediately gets arrested for this because he's the leader of all of this unionizing drama, and they just assume that he shoots this administrator who is in charge of doing the negotiations with the graduate students. Sarah makes some incredibly stupid choices. I feel like she needs to be slapped in parts of this book because she gets a little bit hysterical. It's a bit much, but I'm really glad to see a lot more of her in this one. I did find myself definitely frustrated with Heather at times in this book. Her priorities were not in line, and it was making me nervous. Like halfway through the book, I'm like, really, can you just not make this little phone call and clear that up before you go on a harebrained scheme to Westchester. Come on, let's go here. But it ended up so nice. It was such a good little book, and I cannot wait. I have the fourth book on my shelf. I want to get to it like right now. So good. 4 stars. So that is what I've read so far this August. As for currently reading or starting, I'm going to start this one today, The Pursuit, from the library, obviously, and I want to make sure I get it back because it's only fair. And this one is the next book in the Fox and O'Hare series that Janet Evanovich writes with Lee Goldberg. And if you haven't read the previous books, the synopsis for this might be a little bit not understandable for you, so I'm not going to give you a synopsis. But if you enjoy Janet Evanovich's sort of writing and the over the top, then you'd probably like this series as well. And while I was on vacation, I did a bad thing, and I signed into NetGalley, and I requested some books. So now, I don't have enough books to read. I actually got approved for some of them. A lot of times I don't get approved for the books on NetGalley. So what I do, it's kind of surprising. But one of them I started called Once a Soldier, and it's the first book in a new series by Mary Jo Putney, who I have read in the past and enjoyed. I am about halfway through this book, and I'm really enjoying how it's very mellow. So I'm really liking it so far. So you'll see my review for that at the end of the month. So that's what I'm up to so far. We'll see what I read the end of the month. I am kind of just taking it easy. I have a dance competition coming on Saturday, so I'll be gone the weekend. I will have some time to read, but I'm usually so nervous that I can't focus on anything. And then I start my daughter back to homeschool on Monday is our start date. So things might get a little bit busy at the end of the month. We'll see how much I read, and that's kind of why I chose to just shelve back Great Expectations and all of that until I'm back into the school routine again. So I will see you guys again. Have a lovely day and a lovely month. Bye.